Here goes. I think other people have done videos like this on the channel and I haven't. This is completely nerve-wracking for me. But there is a comic by Noelle Stevenson called The Weight of Them, which was released a couple of days ago. It's about the artist's struggle with gender identity, the struggles and the fear and the acceptance of feelings even when they aren't clear or they don't feel right. I will link it in the description of the video because if you're having any sort of gender identity crisis, I think it's worth reading. B showed it to me last night and it had a really unexpected and profound effect on me. Namely that I read the whole thing and the whole time I was flicking through it, feeling really, really numb as I read it. And then within seconds of finishing the last page, I abruptly just broke down sobbing and shaking and I couldn't calm myself down. This gender identity business is hard and it's heavy. And I guess this is something of a coming out video, but mostly it's a letting it out video because I've kept all of this bottled up inside of me for ages and ages and I haven't really talked about it publicly at all, and it isn't getting any easier. So here goes. A disclaimer first of all, that this is just my experience and things that I've discussed with other people who feel similarly to me. I don't claim in any way that everything that I say is true for everybody, or that there's only one way to experience these feelings. But this is just me being brutally honest about my gender identity and viewing the world through the lens of my own experiences. I've used they them pronouns online and with my friends for about 2 years, and I haven't really talked about it much with my family. Before that I bounced back and forth between they them and she her, and I've never really touched he him pronouns publicly, even though there are days when I'm feeling completely sure of it, and there are days where I discuss it at length with B. But the thought of using it makes me feel guilty. So, like Noelle says in the comic, I feel like I'm not trans enough. I don't deserve to identify that way. It's not a feeling that I feel reflects onto other people and how they should feel. It's just something that I associate to myself. So I feel like I personally am not trans enough, and I don't hold anything against people who do use those pronouns or anything like that. It just... So it doesn't help that the first influence I had regarding gender identity had a skewed bias of its own that led me to believe that even trans people had to fit into the binary. Like that was the only way to experience it right. It wasn't his fault, nor was it intentional, it was just his personal experience and the only reference that I had. So my first steps into the journey had me believing that to be trans you had to desire to purely cis-pass opposite to your assigned at birth gender, and because I didn't fit into that box, I didn't know what to do. When I first learned of the non-binary and gender fluid identities, I didn't get it. I didn't like it for myself because I felt lost if I couldn't find a box to fit into at all. I really wanted to fit into the binary, and I thought surely if I am not just a girl, then surely I should feel like I am a boy. And if I do not feel like a boy, then I must be a girl, surely. And therefore any feelings I had to the opposite were broken and not valid. And again, this only applied to me. When other people chose to identify how it worked for them, I was comfortable with it and accepting of it. And then when it came to myself, it was like an entirely different standard. And one that I'm still trying to figure out as I hold myself to it. I don't know if I just simply don't see it happening, but I don't think there's enough of a conversation about the guilt and the second guessing that comes from questioning your gender identity. There's innumerous ways in which these feelings hit us. There's guilt that your family will hate to hear it and that you'll make them feel bad. There's guilt that you're just doing it for attention, even if there's no evidence of that, even when you haven't breathed a word of it to anyone outside of your own mind. There's questioning that you're making a poor choice, or that you're going to feel differently later. There's embarrassment, and there's embarrassment in anticipation of being embarrassed, of the experiences you might go through, like misgendering or people not understanding, having to explain to people, the fear of people's responses, fear of being mocked for just trying to figure out who you are. And there's feeling a different way on a different day, and every time thinking I must have been wrong yesterday, and that the way you were thinking of identifying before isn't right. I'm not saying everyone experiences this or that experiences all of these. I'm just saying that it's really damn hard to figure out what you're doing. There's no handbook for this. Up until recent years, there hasn't even been a discussion about this at all. And when you see online people talking about their identities or defending other people's, it feels like everybody's so sure about it. And there's no conversation going on of, hey, it's okay. If you haven't figured it out, if you're terrified, and if you're feeling guilty, if you're feeling like you don't deserve it, or if you're feeling like you're trying to shove yourself into a box, you're a round peg going into a square hole. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about the second guessing and the deciding identity one day and then the next day changing your mind again and then feeling broken or just bad that you are changing your mind. Add to the equation the fact that there's people who are cruel about it. We're in a global society that, for the most part, still is in the binary and refuses to accept anything else. A society that still acts like pigs, just about people's appearances in general, let alone how they want to identify, about people's sexuality, let alone their gender expression. People who are ignorant and who hurt you unintentionally just by sharing their uninformed views mid-conversation without any idea that they're talking to the exact person that they're talking about. People who hurt you intentionally by targeting you, or targeting you in discussions that they think you'll never see. Add to that the desperation forced upon us probably by this same society, the same ideal, but desperation just to feel attractive in general, and then add into that self-loathing that comes from that. You get questioning if you have a gender identity issue on your hands at all, or if you just hate yourself. Do you feel ugly? Do you just believe you'll feel less ugly as another gender? You get fear that if you settle on a binary trans identity and you want to transition, you're going to hate yourself even more on the other side of it, and it's too late then. You're going to feel uglier, and then what? But that is shallow, and then you feel bad for being shallow, and then you question, am I not allowed to be shallow about myself? Am I not allowed to care how I look? It's exhausting, and then I just give up thinking about it after a while because my head hurts. The things that make gender identity hard are endless. Sometimes it's about not feeling entitled to your feelings. Other times it's about not trusting them because they prove to be too volatile too often. And the longer you think about it, the more you accept that your present feelings might not be the same tomorrow. This is all part of the journey. It doesn't make it easier. Of the few things I have come to understand, it's that struggling is allowed. Questioning it is allowed. Feeling guilty and doubting and changing your mind over and over again, it's just a natural part of the process, especially when we're told our whole lives that we have to be something. And as soon as we start to feel and accept that we're something else, we have to question it. We have to feel strange about it. And there's definitely people who come to the realization and are able to accept it easier and just feel free. But I highly doubt I'm the only person who is bouncing back and forth and almost not wanting it, and wanting it so bad at the same time. This is just the human experience. Things aren't always certain. In fact, they rarely are certain. And your experience is unique to you. The same way your thoughts and your memories and your interests are unique to you. People are so unique. And you need to allow yourself to feel the things that you feel and forgive yourself for beating yourself up about it. I say this for you, but I'm saying this hugely for me because I do this so often. I have to forgive myself for feeling bad. And I can't take it out on me when I'm just doing something that's natural, something that's happening inside my head. So I wanted to talk a bit about my personal experience through the years of being not cisgendered, and not straight. Just in case it helps anyone else, and because if I speak it out loud, maybe I'll get it out of my head and it will stop turning over and over in my mind and getting more and more stressful. My experience includes staring endlessly at pictures of people I would love to look like, male and female and everything in between. Analysing every feature of their faces and their bodies and passing judgment on myself, never them. It includes standing in front of the wardrobe wearing a towel after a shower, leafing through my clothes trying to work out how I'm feeling that morning and finding nothing that isn't going to make me feel bad one way or another. And then trying to shop for clothes and not being able to find anything new either, because everything I look at just makes me question myself more. It includes waking up and feeling fully masculine and confident about it even. Choosing my outfit and doing my hair and my makeup to fit how I'm feeling, then looking in the mirror and just being crippled with dysphoria because even after all of that effort, the outside doesn't match the inside. My reflection is telling me that I'm lying, that I would never pass, to give up the lie and stop pretending to be something that I'm not. It's not fair on myself, but it is what I experience over and over again, multiple times a week. I remember being about 8 years old and learning there were people in the world who would surgically become the opposite gender to what they were born. And I was outside the school gates and walking to a friend's house, I remember this so clearly, thinking that if I could do it, I would do it, but also I wouldn't want to tell my family, so maybe if one day I ran away and never saw them again, I could do it. And how can I let myself question my feelings of not being female when I was feeling like that as a child? But then I hit puberty pretty young and I developed pretty fast, and I wanted attention from boys. You know, I was a 11, 12, 13-year-old girl and I wanted attention from boys. I'm bisexual now, no surprise there, but I have never had any childhood crushes on girls or female characters, and I only ever wanted attention from boys. I dressed like them and I tried to befriend them, and I hypersexualized myself for them. I wanted to explore their bodies, but my own body disgusted me. I found the female form really gross when I was going through puberty, and it wasn't until years and years later that things started to finally make a little bit more sense. When I started to emotionally connect with assigned female at birth people and realised I'd never be able to do that with sort of cis male people, I finally started to be interested in female bodies then too, and started to realise that maybe I was more envious of male bodies than I was desiring of them. And gender identity, it wasn't even a discussion then. There weren't easy resources without seeking them out medically. I'm 30 now, and this was well over a decade ago. Whatever conflicting feelings I had to be puzzled out on my own. And I honestly thought what I was trying to work out was my sexuality and not my gender. And I thought, when I started to feel envious of male bodies, that I'd figured it out. I thought maybe I wanted a girlfriend and I wanted to be male. Was that it? I'd cracked it. But then what if I was wrong? What if I wanted a boyfriend and wanted to look like one of the cute girls that I found myself staring at? Doubt, guilt, self-loathing. It was a vicious cycle, and gender hadn't even entered the equation yet at that point. I am bisexual, pansexual, whatever you're more comfortable with calling it. I use the two of them interchangeably. Settling on that got easier and easier as I got older. I am attracted to all genders as long as I connect with the person. And I am kind of shallow. It does matter to me if I'm physically attracted to someone, but being physically attracted to them doesn't matter what body they have. At the same time, the gender thing got harder and harder. I started cosplaying in 2008, and I realised almost instantaneously how much more I liked myself dressed as a man. I started doing it on the daily, and I was hit with dysphoria, wearing it outside, out of cosplay, and judgment from strangers, and misgendering. I stopped doing it. I stuck to doing it in cosplay, and then a few years later I stopped cosplaying altogether in 2012 for years. Between then and when B and I got together, I was living a fully female identifying life, which happened after several years of questioning. I had a very normal office job and hung out and flirted with my very normal cisgendered male colleagues. I had long hair, I wore skirts and I wore makeup every day, and I didn't expose myself to any more material that might make me question my existence. I thought if I pushed and pushed on that narrative, then I might be able to accept it. And I did, for 2 years. But on the weekend and after work, I still went home and I still cried about it and panicked about it on the regular. I questioned it over and over again in my head. If anyone ever argues with you that gender identity is a choice, tell them this. If we had a choice, if people had a choice whether they wanted to be cis or not cis, no one would choose to go through all of the struggles that LGBT people, whether it's a gender thing or a sexuality thing, go through. No one is making this decision and going, I'll choose to be the person who suffers. It must be nice to be cis and to not look at the body that you were born in and feel like you're wearing a weird costume that you can't take off. That's not to say cis people can't experience body dysmorphia. It happens. When B and I got together, I began to let myself question again. For context, my fully female identifying life also involved crushing down my sexuality for those 2 years. I was bisexual, so I had the option of pretending to be straight, and I tried to find a boyfriend on Tinder every night after work. I had been crazy about B for years and years, and we fell out of touch, and then we got back in contact with one another, and when it finally happened and we got together, I was free to accept my sexuality again. The shackles came off, and almost immediately the gender question reared its head. I believe I brought it up to B within a week of being together, and they were so accepting of the struggle, I felt like I was actually allowed to question it for the first time. I remember immediately wanting to cut my hair short. I think a lot of assigned female at birth people get there quickly, and I remember showing my mum a really extreme short haircut that I wanted, and I remember her immediate reaction being to ask me, quite confused and concerned, "What are you trying to be?" I know no harm was intended by that, but that really sums it up, doesn't it? Not what I am trying to be, but what am I? 5 years later, I still haven't worked it out. Questioning has allowed me to feel the full force of my dysphoria in ways I've never experienced it before that. There have been plenty of tears and panic attacks, plenty of staring into the mirror and wanting to smash it because I wish it would just show me the truth. In the course of writing this video, I've been forced to think about it, and I've slid back and forth across the scale so many times that my head hurts. The truth is that everybody experiences it differently. There is no one way to question your gender. There is no one way to be transgender either. And no, that term does not only denote trans people who want to adhere to the binary scale or who medically transition, as I believed a while ago. I am trans because I am not cis, and if you aren't cis, you are trans too. I'm not female to male, or if I am, I haven't got there yet. But I don't fit perfectly into the non-binary or gender fluid brackets because I'm not sure. But I'm female to something, and I have to give myself the space to breathe and accept that it's never going to be a light bulb moment of figuring it out. People need to accept that their own feelings as well aren't the only way to feel this journey. The reason I decided to write this down was to get it out of my head, and the reason I decided to make it into a video is because I realised that first experience I had speaking to somebody about gender expression, where I started to take away from it that in order to be trans I had to fit into the binary boxes. I don't want that to be other people's experiences. I want people to know that if they're struggling, it's okay, and if they haven't decided on something, it's okay, and that they're not alone in that feeling. This has been my story, and maybe you relate to it, maybe you don't, that's okay, it's just my feelings, it's my struggle with it. I will say that wanting to fit into the binary is obviously valid too. I really wish that I did. I have a friend, and I won't name names because exposing people as being trans is not really acceptable, even if the person is personally open about it. That's not your place to do. But I have a friend who says lightheartedly, "I wish I'd just been a lesbian, that would have been so much easier." Fitting into the binary definitely would have been easier for me. Learning to accept that I may never find a comfortable place on the gender scale is a difficult journey that I'm still undertaking. But I'm really hoping that talking about it like this and sharing my story with other people might bring me some peace. So there, I said this was my coming out video, but there isn't really a result for it. What am I? How do I identify? If I look at different definitions, I can probably identify as trans masculine, but not trans male. But then there are days where I feel very, very feminine. There's plenty of doing my makeup and dressing a certain way because I can't help subconsciously placing more value on feeling pretty than feeling right in my own skin. That's okay. I am allowed to feel that way. This is me giving myself permission to feel that way without feeling guilty about it. Without being angry at myself about it. This is me allowing myself to accept that I don't like the genetic makeup of my body. I don't want to be female, but sometimes I want to be feminine. Those two things don't have to coincide with one another. They can exist standalone. For now, I'm trying to focus on another question, equally as huge and confusing. Who am I? Not what, who? The answer changes every day. My legal name doesn't feel comfortable and I haven't used it online for years and years. My nicknames feel a little convoluted, to be honest. I use them because I have to use something, and I haven't settled on a preferred name or anything like that yet. I don't know my style, I don't know what I want out of life, or out of myself. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't want to change my mind after I've settled on something, so I'm just taking my time. If I do end up settling on something, I guess I'll do an update, but for now I will leave you with this. I am just me. Just me. Being me is messy, and it has a fluid definition that updates all the time. I am a person who just wants to be comfortable, and when I find comfortable, perhaps it will have a label, but perhaps it won't. Nothing in life is static. Life is constantly moving. Our thoughts and feelings are constantly changing, and with it, we change too. We adapt, and the definition of who we are and what we are changes along the way. It's okay to be me, even if figuring out what that means is hard. And it's okay to be you, whatever that means to you. This has been a really hard video. I'm actually physically shaking just to say all of this out loud. But I appreciate if you've watched all the way to the end. If you have an experience of your own that you would like to share, then please do. It might be nice to make a video of other people's experiences, obviously anonymously, to share more of the stories that we find we relate to, but perhaps don't hear elsewhere. But in any case, I hope this has helped you find some clarity, or if you didn't need the clarity, helped you understand a different point of view. I think I might be sharing this to my family too. So if anything happens with that, I'll update you. But there we go. It is what it is. A brutally honest discussion of my gender identity. You don't care, do you, Bubba? Say hi to the camera.